How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay.
For one, thank you for inviting me into your home.
Absolutely. Happy to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what do we have?
So we have Sardi's. It's a cult favorite, I like to say, at least in the DMV area. They have a lot of stores in or locations in Maryland. I'm not sure if they have some in Virginia or not, but basically it's Peruvian chicken. Peruvian chicken with, chicken fried rice, plantains, green beans. I wasn't sure of
What to
all of the
get?
dietary restrictions. I'm not eating meat right now, and I didn't even know that they did not have. I didn't know that the fried rice had chicken in it, so I'm going to be eating around the chicken.
Is this a temporary thing, or are you?
I started doing dry January, and with it, I figured I would just kind of go pretty extreme and cut back on meat because meat has a lot of hormones in it, and just do like certain types of fish once a week. And I could not feel better than ever. I've lost 10 pounds. Not that I was a huge person, but I just feel better. I feel a lot more balanced.
Yes.
And I have a lot more energy. I'm working out more. I'm not doing as strenuous of a workout because I'm not eating a lot of meat. And so I don't want to get too tired, but I have just cut back. I'm trying to just lean more into this plant-based eating if I can.
So if I can give you a suggestion,
Okay.
tofu.
But tofu is soy-based, isn't it?
What
Soy
is
isn't
it made of?
necessarily the best for us. I'm not sure. I'm not a plant-based guru, so please do not take what I'm saying is
the
word.
reason I say tofu is because it has lots of protein.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not animal products.
Right.
And it's actually really good, and it comes in different textures. Or not textures, I'm sorry. It comes in different thickness.
Okay.
So it can be tough or it can be softer. Like they have different degrees of types of tofu.
Okay.
But the best thing about it is that it can taste really, really good if you cook it a particular way.
Ah, okay.
So it soaks up everything. So if you put it in a particular sauce, and it's like spicy, or if it, it just soaks it all up. Okay. So it's really flavorful if you cook it a particular way.
Got it.
So like my wife, she has this thing called the Jamaican medley. And it has all these different spices and sauces in it.
Right.
And it tastes delicious.
Okay, that's great.
And it's a very reasonable amount of protein within it. And it's not heavy as well, so that's another thing.
Okay.
So I completely understand you wanting to avoid meat to a degree.
But this sauce is so good. So you have to try this sauce.
What's the sauce called again?
It's called Salsa Verde.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
And it's the name of the place, Sardi's Pollo a la Brasa. And it's dairy free. I have a dairy allergy.
Me too.
So that's one of the reasons why I love this place is that it's dairy free.
Now, actually, do you travel out of the country at all?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Quite a bit.
So have you had dairy products outside of America?
I have.
And you're just perfectly fine, right?
Yes. And it's not it's a thing, but it's not a thing. But it's a thing because why are people pumping hormones into everything here? Yeah. I went to Italy in July and had, although I'm not a fan of American feta cheese, but I had feta cheese. I had dried, aged, I don't know if it was Parmesan or something. But I was like, let me just get a little bit because I don't want to be sick. And nothing. It was completely fine. So, yeah.
So I've been bouncing back and forth between Europe for a number of years now. Before COVID and before I got married. Okay. I think it was 3 or 4 years in a row. I was going to Europe twice a year. And I would usually be gone for maybe 2 weeks. And I was just bouncing from country to country. I'd meet people. Right. And then I would be like, well, I guess I'm going back to meet up with people again. But I remember like in Berlin, went to this pizza place. I had a whole pie by myself.
Yeah.
If I had one slice here, I'd be destroyed. I can't sleep for the night. You know, and I was like, man, our food is poison.
Yeah. That's literally how I feel when I eat a piece of any type of dairy. I mean, that's why doing this no meat January, which I'm basically continuing throughout the month to February, maybe even March, I can just tell a difference in how I feel. I can tell a difference in my body. And the only thing I can think of is that the meat that I've been eating has too many hormones.
Yeah.
And so I can't blame it on one particular place because I eat out a lot. I buy groceries, I cook. So it could be from a number of different sources. And I'm disciplined enough to not eat meat, but I'm not disciplined enough to say, where is this food bought and sourced? Like, was it grass fed? Was it like, I'm not that disciplined yet. So I'm just doing this right now.
Well, I alternate. I mean, I alternate because it's whatever my wife wants to cook, but I'll go back and forth between having kind of like a vegan meal.
Okay.
You know, with protein being the what am I drawing a blank again? The thing I was just telling you about.
Right.
But I'll have that. I always make sure, especially now, that I have like a protein base because I can't do the salad with nothing in it, and it's like, oh, but we have you know, raisins. I'm like, okay, but that can't be the main thing. You know, I need some sort of protein source as like the central piece, and I'll eat everything else around it too.
Yeah. Well, I also get protein from lentils, chickpeas.
But even with she's done that to me. She's like, oh, but we have lentils. Like, but that's not the same.
It's not the same. It's definitely not the same. But Trader Joe's has a really good lentil soup. Not to give free promo, but I mean, it is what it is, and it's really good. So, if someone's watching this from Trader Joe's and wants to
holler at me,
sponsor me, right? The lentil soup is hidden. Like, it's hidden.
Where actually, if you don't mind, because travel is a big thing for me. So where have you gone in Italy?
Wow. Well, that was my second time going. My mom first took me, which was my first international trip when I was 16, maybe 14 or 16, on a school trip with the arts department. We went to Rome, Assisi, and Florence.
Okay.
This go around, I went with a group of friends, and I flew into Rome and spent the night there. Actually, I spent the night in Florence. Flew into Rome, took the train to Florence, and then we went to the Siena region. So we rented this big, nice Airbnb. There were like 15 of us. I think it was like 15 people, and we did, winery, going into Siena, into the city, doing the city tour. Right. And then a couple of us broke off and did our own little thing. So I went to Venice. I'd never been to Venice. It's absolutely beautiful. Another day trip to Florence. Another day trip to Siena. So those were, and then I spent my last day in Rome before I went to the airport. So I went there the night before, got up, went to the Colosseum, and came back and went to the airport.
Did you ever get a chance on either trip to go into the Vatican?
Yes, my first trip when I went with the school. Okay. We did Vatican City.
Makes sense. You were with the school.
Yeah. And we actually got to see the Pope. I don't know. I can't remember what time of year. We must have gone in the spring. But John Paul II, I think that was his name. Pope John Paul II. Yeah. He was the Pope then. So I don't think I was in 16 because I had to be like in 7th or 8th grade. I can't remember. Okay.
Was it like some sort of ceremony or something like that? Or he just happened to be like walking by? He
happened to be like, I can't remember. Obviously I'm older now, but he did the thing where he comes out in his little white vehicle and touches people's hands, and It must have been around Easter, I'm guessing, when we went there, because I can't remember why we would have gone and why he would have been out, but I do remember that. My mom always reminds me. So, yeah. Although we're not Catholic, but nonetheless, it's still like a kind of cool experience.
No, it's definitely a cool experience. Are you Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Christian. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, going through the Vatican was fascinating in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like in one way, it's their appreciation for art and culture.
Absolutely.
And it's something that is kind of missing today.
In what way?
Like the level of artistry and effort, like the way they described how, I'm going to butcher whoever did the Sistine Chapel.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Michelangelo.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably butchering this, but
okay.
whoever I forget which guy it was.
Right.
But the way they described it was like he could have done it a different way, but it wouldn't have come out right. So he basically was in an uncomfortable position for years, painting the ceiling. And that level of dedication and mastery of craft,
right,
I feel like is, especially in art, is kind of missing. Yeah. Like even down to something as kind of silly as like Disney movies. Because I remember the old days. When we went to Florida and went to the whole Disney experience.
Right.
I remember the old days. They would show, this is the area where the artists are, and you could see, maybe they weren't necessarily drawing, but you could kind of see where some of them were. Right. But the way they described it, they had to draw in every single page and go through it and make sure it was consistent. So when it flips all the way through, you get the animation. Well, all that's gone because of computers.
Absolutely. And let's not forget AI.
And AI, yep. And AI is going to wipe all that stuff away.
It's going to blow it up even more.
So so there's that part. Right. The appreciation of art, the preservation of art. But then the other part is the level of opulence. Because it's one thing to be like, yes, they appreciated the art, but it's like, well, it's very specific. They appreciated the art because everybody else couldn't have a painted ceiling, and so
the time to even do that. Right?
Well, just I recognize that, like when I went through Portugal. Portugal is.
I still haven't been there.
You haven't been to Portugal,
but I really want to go.
Highly recommend. Yeah. But when you're going through there, Portugal has a very interesting history. They're up and coming. A lot of it because of tourism, and they're allowing outside money, people to invest to get, like, I think if you invest $1 million in real estate, you get a Portuguese citizenship. Oh. And that Portuguese citizenship gives you access to the EU. So they're trying to do stuff like that. So they're getting a lot of outside money coming in, a lot of foreigners coming in. Yeah. But you can see, like, it's trying to build its way up. Yeah. And the way, when you do these walking tours, the way they talk to you about, some of the strife that they went through and all this other stuff. But then you walk into the churches and there's gold everywhere. Yeah. So you're like, wait, it sounds like the only people who were balling was the Catholic Church back in the day, and they still got gold, everything. It's all all in there. So it's very interesting. Yeah. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing per se.
Well, I mean, we have to remember that the Portuguese were Portugal and the Dutch were some of their original colonizers. So it's no surprise that they have generational wealth built off of, being colonizers in a number of countries, right? So like when I went to Ghana, I went out to the Elmina castles, and I think the thing that when you go to West Africa, because I've been to Ghana, I've been to Senegal, and you see like the points of no return where, slaves were shipped off to the West. Mm-hmm. It's a very surreal feeling. And when I went to Ghana, I found myself being very angry because you see these beautiful castles and then you see these churches that were built by the Portuguese. Mm. But underneath these same churches are the slave dungeons. And so it does make you question, like, what God is this? Like what passage of scripture was used to justify this amount of inhumane treatment, but also being the same God that, I pray to, I believe in, to be my savior. So I think, I don't know, like I'm wondering when I go to Portugal, am I going to feel that same way? Like that feeling that I felt when I was in Ghana, much like when I went to Belgium, just understanding like about King Leopold and what he's done to countries like the Congo, like how can he still be revered and have so many statues? Mm-hmm. Understanding that the wealth of the country was built on, colonization, some form of slavery, the taking of somebody else's raw materials to enrich oneself. So I still want to visit Portugal, but that's always in the back of my mind. Like, I think because I just understand their role in, different forms of colonization and slavery. It just makes it's going to make for an interesting trip. I will say that because I love history.
So I think human history is built on fairness, mm-hmm. and sometimes there are things that people do at a particular time because they think it's the right thing to do, and then later on we're like, actually, it was a horrible thing to do. So like lobotomies.
The what?
Lobotomies. Mm-hmm. There was a period of time where we said, oh, we'll just drive this thing into someone's head and I'll fix their problems.
Right.
And they just started doing it. Mm-hmm. And then they realized, actually, this is pretty barbaric. This isn't working. Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of things that are like that throughout history, where in the moment, we are doing things because the people just before us were doing it. Mm-hmm. And so we're just perpetuating what we're familiar with. And I think that once there's an economic model found, people roll with it. Like I see it in different industries where if we were talking about like homelessness mm-hmm. in the States, okay, you have all these different organizations that pop up, mm-hmm. right? And it sounds like a good thing. We're an organization that pops up and we want to help the homeless.
Right.
But then you start like looking like, well, what exactly are they doing to help? Like, mm-hmm. what are they, like on the surface, it looks good, mm-hmm. but then you start digging and it's like, well, how much money are they getting? And where is this money actually being spent? Mm-hmm. And is this being effective? Mm-hmm. And why are they lobbying that they have all these different laws to make sure they don't pass right. because it would interrupt their bottom line? Like you start looking a little bit deeper, you start realizing that even in situations where people are in need, and there are organizations that were on the face, it sounds like a really great idea. Mm-hmm. I have a friend, she's Austrian, she was living in Germany at the time. Mm-hmm. But when everybody was coming from North Africa, Middle East, and rushing into Europe, mm-hmm. and Germany was like, come on through, mm-hmm. all of a sudden she was telling me like all of these NGOs just started being popping created. Up.
Yeah.
All of these law offices just started coming up for mm-hmm. immigration law. Mm-hmm. All these different things just started sprouting up. Why? Because the government had money to give, mm-hmm. right? So now they're just throwing money all over the place, and you have to ask yourself: are these organizations going to try and are they taking advantage of something? Mm-hmm. Is there incentive for it to stop? Because I mean, I don't know about Germany. But we know here mm-hmm. we have different lobbying firms.
Absolutely.
That make sure like, hey, by the way, keep it going.
Right.
You know, and it's like, well, it's not good if it keeps going. Like,
of course.
you know, we want to find some sort of solution. No, no, no. The money's not in the solution. It's about perpetuating the problem. So to kind of bring it back to the whole slavery thing, I think it's much of that, which is why, you know, the same book that's used to justify slavery is also the same book that's helped stop slavery. And that's the interesting part, because I say this as a Christian as well, people pervert stuff all the time.
Absolutely.
And if you get, because it's not about the book, it's about the person who holds the book and who they can convince. But we know what the truth is. And we know that this is not something that we were supposed to do if we were to abide by this book. So that's the unfortunate thing, is when you have people who pervert any faith, who pervert it and say, well, see this one small line, then we know we must build an entire empire based off of that one small line.
Right.
Or you see this one small line, what they really mean is like, well, that's not what it says.
Right.
Right. But this person's a priest or a high level, religious figure.
Right.
And they're saying it, so we must go along with it. You know,
right.
The Pope even. The Pope says, hey, listen, we can get some Africans. Let's get this going.
Right.
You know? But at the end of the day, that's why I try to lean on progress, because that's all we really have. You know, we can be upset at the past, but I think it's good to look at where we've come from and see what the progress is. But we don't have the same taste and the same manner to conquer like we used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been listening to what you've been saying, and I definitely think progress is forward looking.
Yeah.
I also think because we're in a time now where people are trying to erase the past. And I think we're just in dangerous educational territory with what is the truth and what is subjective and what is not going to be taught to people that are coming after us. And so I make it a point to, even if it's uncomfortable, bring it up to just remind people, like, this happened. It existed. Doesn't mean that I don't care about forward, progress and looking at how far we have come as a country. But I think in a world where so many people, just regular lay people, put out crazy things, and in a world where we have politicians who are uncomfortable with the past of this country, I always find it my duty to just bring it into the conversation so that it doesn't go unsaid, and for the ancestors, so that our ancestors will remember that we're still speaking their names, even though, they're not here to see us do it.
Right.
But their spirit still lives on. So in that vein, I absolutely agree. We've come a long way. But I also know that there is a movement in this country to erase the ugly history of this country. And I'm not overly beating it down, but we have to talk about it so that we don't repeat it again.
Yeah. I think that for me, and I'm interested in history as well. I think for me, history is about learning the lessons of the past. My fear, and this is not necessarily like a political spectrum or anything like that. My fear is the usage of history to bludgeon other people,
right,
who had nothing to do with the past. And also, I will say this, it's a little bit of a pet peeve. I don't like it when people take the accolades of people of the past and use it to say that they're something. So like I've had like legit conversations with white supremacists. Okay. And they always do this.
What is a legit conversation with a white supremacist?
Like I actually had a back and forth.
Okay.
I was like, explain this one to me.
Right.
I want to hear this one, right? And they always do this. They say, us white people built these great civilizations. And they'll start naming off like the Sistine Chapel. We made the Sistine Chapel. We made this. We made that. And I think to myself, the Sistine Chapel is beautiful. You had nothing to do with it. You can barely tie your shoes. but you want to take someone else's credentials and their accomplishments to say that we did it. Like that'd be like if I was like, we can dunk like LeBron. No, I can't dunk like LeBron. LeBron can dunk like LeBron. Right. So that's something that I've noticed. That sometimes people use the past, whether it's overlooking stuff that they want to avoid, or they overly embrace, something that they would never do.
Absolutely.
Right? Even something down to, I see a lot of people who, and I understand it to a degree, they romanticize, our independence from the British colony, from Britain. And they take on the moniker of patriots, right? And they talk in a romantic way about civil war and and wanting to break apart and fight for patriotism. And I'm just saying to myself, you guys sound like the type of people who, it's like when someone says, I wish someone would break into my house. Oh, I'd shoot them. I was like, murdering someone is like taking another life is like next level. That's very homicidal. But you wouldn't want to do that. Like, we all know that in that moment, your hand's going to shake, right? Because that's a normal response.
Right.
I see people using the past and thinking like, yeah, that must have been a great time as our country's being ripped apart and we were fighting each other.
Well, I think like we are, again, if we're looking at even just using that frame, right? If we just use that frame of, the way this country, these United States were built, we are not a country, yes, we're built on freedom, liberty, justice for all. But when we say all, who did all include, right? So it didn't include people who look like us. And when we think about people wanting to take up arms, when we talk about the amendments, they're really only acting out what our country has already done. And so I'm just at a point where I'm not surprised when people say, I wish somebody would run up in here because they want to shoot. Because we shoot and kill other people as well. Like, that's what this country has done. That's what we continue to help other countries do. And so then we get upset when we hear people talking about it. Yes, it's upsetting. Yes, it's unsettling. Yes, it's frustrating. But when we look at the example of who we are, right, we tell everybody we are exceptional. American exceptionalism is a thing. But what are we exceptional in? Right? Like, we're exceptionally, we are exceptional in helping to curate, produce, support war. Maybe not here on our soil, but through financial means, right? And so when I think about just the American tenor of patriotism, it's undergirded in just the history of what we've done, right? You talked about the Civil War. That was something that happened. The American Revolution, like all of these things on how this country has begun to formulate itself, there's no surprise when you have a sector of the country who really thinks back like they were in the 1900s. Because that's what this country has done. Now, obviously, we're growing, we're changing, but you still see people who might be history buffs, but just on a different perspective. Like, maybe they want to study how we've been conquerors, right? Maybe we haven't gone and taken anyone's land per se. I don't even know if I should say that, but there are people who like war, military, coup-like activities, and I'm just not surprised. I mean, is it frustrating to see it and hear it? Sure. But am I surprised? Absolutely not.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. The only thing I would add is I think they like it from a distance.
Okay.
It's kind of like it's the grass is greener kind of thing. Like, I've seen where people are like, there are people who are kind of like anti-woke, and then they see Putin do something. He's like, men and women and women. They're like, Putin knows what's up. Putin's great. And it's like, but he said one thing that you agree with. That doesn't mean that he's a great person or Russia's doing everything fine.
Right.
But from a distance, you have the luxury of saying that because Putin doesn't affect your life.
Right.
and I see people wishing for stuff like, we need to fight. Well, you're not fighting.
Right.
You're sitting at home chatting on the computer.
Absolutely.
Right. There's somebody else who's going to be sacrificing for your demands.
Yeah.
And I feel like that when it comes to people in power. Look at Lindsey Graham. Yeah. Lindsey Graham hasn't found a war that he doesn't want to be a part of. You know? And he's just like, nope, you know what? I've been ringing this bell for Iran. Let's go in there and do it. But he's not sacrificing anything.
Of course right? He's not.
And I see a lot of that. I see a lot of, from a distance, people, they have the luxury of wanting something that they won't have any sort of responsibility in how it turns out and advocating for.
Right.
And it just becomes like this, it's almost like real life is Call of Duty for people.
Yes.
You know, they think they can just say, oh man, I would have jumped through the window and shot him in the head.
Right.
And it's like, well, no, that's not.
It's not a video. Life is not a video game.
Right.
Our soldiers are not like characters that you get to like PS5 your way through like a feeling. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think particularly for somebody like Lindsey Graham, a U.S. Senator, again, contextually, he's from South Carolina, Civil War. You get what I'm saying? So all of these things are correlated in some way. But when I think about America's position in a number of wars, I just think about money.
Yeah. Well, this is always about that's the thing.
It's about money.
It's about money and resources. You know, every single time, like Syria. Syria is a fascinating one because you're like, why is Syria kicking off years ago? And then you found out, like, or at least in my position, I found out, like, why are the Russians in there?
Yeah.
It's like, what do the Russians have to do with Syria? Not anywhere close with. And it's because other people throughout the Middle East want to run a pipeline, particularly Saudi Arabia in particular wants to run a pipeline into mainland Europe. Mainland Europe is Russia's biggest customer. So you're interfering on their money. Yeah. So guess what? We're going to come in and we're going to help, I can't remember his name, but we're going to help them fight against, their other side Russia. To keep it from completely falling apart so they can't build that pipeline into the United States. And then what ends up happening? Funny enough, Ukraine ends up happening. And what becomes one of the justifications? We're going to blow up your pipeline. And that's what we did. So, and they want us to believe that Russia blew up their own pipeline that they could just hit the off switch for. No, we blew up the pipeline in support of certain people. So it's this kind of thing where it's like, of course it's about money and resources.
Yeah, of course.
Throughout human history, it's been about money and resources.
Right.
That's why we conquer land. That's why we take stuff. It's about money and resources. And I think more people are waking up to it. Even the patriot types that I tell you about, more of them are realizing we're getting nothing from this war hawkish attitude. And I wish more people understood that. It's deeper than they just don't like them.
Right. It's never. Yeah.
It's not that. Yeah. They just want money and resources, and they'll do whatever it takes to justify getting in there for money and resources. Weapons of mass destruction. Turns out there wasn't any. Go figure.
Go figure. Right.
So I mean, of course, it's about going in and grabbing that oil. Yeah. You know, is there any coincidence that we have a epidemic when it comes to drugs in the United States that requires opium, and yet we were in Afghanistan, which has a lot of opium. Oh, okay, right. You know, it's like, so I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
I think you are drawing the correlation that people just need to understand that, like, things are not what our government tells us. You really got to go out and do your own independent research. You really have to, like, follow the money. You have to follow the history. And yes, you end up going down a rabbit hole trying to figure out, well, why did this even happen? Like, what's the backstory? And you may not get that from American media. You have to get that from other sources to really discover, because we're being fed a lens of what our own government wants us to know and understand. Even the way that we understand, like, even like the Israel-Hamas war, right? We saw all of our major outlets, conservative, liberal, down the middle, whomever, really take a side in what they thought, or the executives thought rather, to be our position. And so it's no wonder when you talk to people, the average person who's not really paying attention is like, oh yeah, I saw that on the news. It's messed up what's going on. We should do this or we should do that, without really knowing, right? Like they don't have an informed opinion about it, but it's because our media wants us to be uninformed.
I agree. Even from someone like myself who watches this stuff on a daily, I have no true opinion about that because I feel like that is the one thing that is so complicated, and it's very emotional for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And I think for certain people, it's their thing. They're all in it, and I'm like, that's not my thing. You know, because I can't. You don't have to have a comment on everything. In my opinion.
You don't. I agree. I think it's nuanced, right? Like I think one of the rules of war is if you go to war with someone and you lose, some of your land gets taken away.
Right.
That's just the art of war, right? The other thing is dumping a whole population of people on someone else's territory is also wrong. And so I think that two things can be true. One side can have their opinion and be very firm in that, and I think the other side can have their opinion and be just as firm, and those truths can coexist at the same time.
Yeah.
I think what we can probably all agree on is that killing is killing, no matter which side it's on. And if you want to call it genocide, if you want to call it displacement or replacement, it does appear that the Palestinian side, or their land, has slowly been taken away over the years. But also the nuance is, if you're continuously going to war and losing, then again, some of the spoils of war is land. And so I agree with you. It's hard for me to even talk about, because I don't proclaim to know the best solution. I mean, obviously calling for a two-state is probably the best solution, but I don't proclaim to know all of the history in its most thorough form to even speak intelligently about it. Like I remember at the top of this year, I was on a network, and they give you the topics ahead of time. They did not give me that topic, and so
set you up.
I know that I was a deer in headlights, literally, and I was like, they're probably not going to invite me back because I didn't have an informed opinion. But it's because, like you said, it's nuanced. It's not necessarily my favorite subject to discuss. But I always just say to stay on the safe side, it's a conversation that's hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I honestly, I feel that same way relatively about immigration. Like it's not a conversation that I'm shying away from, but I haven't seen any one of our administrations, regardless of if they've been Democrat or liberal or conservative, get it right. We just hear the finger pointing. We see the finger pointing, like, do it this way, no, do it that way, no this, no that.
Yeah. And
you know who gets to suffer? People in border cities or border states.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the immigration thing, in my opinion, the way things are going, I think immigration will be the deciding policy issue of the 2024 election, because, and I'm much on the side of what you're saying. Everybody was just saying it's Texas's issue, or the border states or the border towns, right? It's always been their issue, and right or wrong, the initial attempt to send people other places, yes, it's political. That's what it is. However, in some ways, it was inevitable to happen, because El Paso can't support the millions of people coming in. I always say this: managing people is the hardest thing you can do. Like if someone came to you and says, I have no money, I have no resources, take care of me. One person, you'd be like, fuck, I don't know how to take care of this. Right. That's a lot. That's a lot for me to do. Now imagine if 10,000 people show up, 100,000, a million people. Now you have to take care of them daily. And that's something, and like that, not progressively. Right. We're talking in a matter of months. You have to take care of all these people. Of course, like, it's going to fall apart, it's going to fail, and people are just going to start shipping people everywhere. And so now the immigration issue, the luxury, and this is why I say like a luxury at a distance, to say we're a sanctuary, but at the same time you're a sanctuary with nobody, and all of a sudden people are saying, well, here's 50,000, thanks sanctuary, and I think that's then this realization, like, oh, we have to manage. Now we have to keep up with what we just said. But doing that is extremely difficult.
It is. And listen, I've worked in local government, and I don't proclaim to know what a city has to absorb when they take on that. But I mean, we're in Washington, D.C. D.C. has been named, or the mayor, she said that this is a sanctuary city. Now, the conversation after that, right? Because there's a comma right there. Same thing with Eric Adams in New York. The comma is, now where do you shift the city's budget to help with these folks that are coming in from a number of different places and countries? Because if you stand up, if you raise your hand and say, I want to be a sanctuary city, which is totally fine, and it's a humane thing to do, and it's something that's helpful, how do you pay for it?
Well,
right?
They take from everything else.
Exactly. And so something has to suffer to help out other people that are in need. And because we have this theory in this country, like, not in my backyard and them over there and put them over there, like, I don't know that people think about it from the like local level or even, the gubernatorial level. Like, these are things that weigh on a city and a state's budget. And you hear Eric Adams, I think I saw a clip of him maybe a week or so ago saying, we're going to have to start asking New Yorkers to open up their homes to migrants. Well, that's tricky, right?
Yeah.
Just like if we practically think about that, like, I have a house and my mayor is asking me to house someone, when there are other unhoused people in the city already. Right. Like, mind you, right? Unhoused people living outside, cold temperatures, hot temperatures, whatever it is. So that's why I'm saying, like, I sympathize with the Department of Homeland Security and Secretary Mayorkas. I do. I would not want that job. I have to deal with the crazy House Republicans who are trying to impeach him. I mean, just even that in itself, like, again, when we talk about this immigration bill, McConnell wants to get it signed and have it attached to the Ukrainian money. It appeared that Senate Democrats were willing to work with McConnell on this. But then you have the Speaker of the House, Johnson, on TV saying that they're not planning to sign a deal based upon the influence, I'll say, of Donald Trump. But you all have just been complaining about this is the number one issue. Right. But now you're saying you won't sign a deal. So to me, even though this is a highly political topic, you're further politicizing it by not agreeing to come to a conclusion out of fear of helping President Biden in this administration. But you also know that this is a major issue in this country.
Yes.
It make sense.
Well, and that the right word is political. All of this is political. This is a humanitarian issue. Yes. And it's not being managed well. No. At all. And I almost feel like there's a couple of things that could be done coming from the Biden administration, specifically Biden, because he reversed a lot of policies. And I wish I could remember the guy's name, but he worked for, I want to say, Department of Homeland Security. He had been there for a number of years. He said, what's happening now makes no sense. And I don't understand, not in a non-political way, I don't understand what the emphasis of having this reversal, because we see what's happening. And I don't think people realize how the cartel is making a killing right now. I don't even think people understand what the cartels are.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, that how much money they're making. They're the ultimate capitalists, right? There's no moral. Right. It's just about making money, right? And seizing control over whatever it is. They'll sell avocados, they'll sell people into sex slavery, they'll sell children, women, they don't care. They'll sell drugs. They don't care. As long as they make money. They'll make sure when you go to Cancun that you're nice and safe because they want tourism. They make money. So they're the ultimate capitalists with zero with zero regard for anything. So there's the cartel part, but I don't think people realize it's not just people from Central America.
No, it's not.
It's everyone from everywhere. And it's because it's become a market. Like the things have been so bad that people are like, well, it's a good chance I'm going to make it in now. And now we have this influx. That's why so many times they'll ask people where they're from now. Before they didn't. It used to be assumed that they were from Mexico.
Yeah, just because that's the border.
That's the border.
Right.
But now they ask, where are you from? And it'll be a line of people. China, Senegal, Haiti, Nicaragua, everywhere. Brazil. I've heard, I don't know how many continents. India. You hear all this, and it's because it's an economy now. You go in those countries, they pay thousands of dollars to get trafficked, ultimately get trafficked into Mexico, and the cartel takes them across, and they don't even have to try to sneak in. They say, here they come, and that's it.
Yeah, I remember when this administration was turning over from Trump to Biden, there were reports that, the border would be flooded. There were reports about that because Democratic, or I keep saying Democratic, but, it is Democratic. Democratic presidents tend to be more relaxed on border challenges and issues.
Which is interesting because they used to call Obama was a deporter in chief.
They sure did. Sure did. But I started this conversation by saying no president has gotten it completely right. And I believe that. I think that this is just, it's an issue. And to me, it's an issue of resources as well. Right? It goes back to money. Like, why can't we, as much money as we pad our defense budget with, why can't we pad our border patrol, lawyers for migrants who come over, resources for border states and cities? But even beyond that, I remember when the VP was speaking maybe early in her tenure, and she said something that really, I think it caused it was unsettling for a lot of people, particularly from Central America. Like, if you're thinking about coming, don't come. It was something, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, do not come.
Right. Which I was kind of like, eek. But the other thing is, if these countries are our allies, why can't we support infrastructure for them? Why can't we support whatever type of financial needs that they may have, instead of having their residents feel like they have no other option but to leave? So I like to see the cost-benefit analysis of pumping money into these economies to fix whatever the one issue is that is driving people out, versus the number of people that are trying to come into the country. I can't really say I'm anti-immigration, because to me, America is a country of immigrants. We're all inhabitants of somebody else's land, of Native Americans' land. So I don't think I'd ever say, shut the border down. I don't think that would ever be my position.
Right.
Is it a problem? Absolutely. Does it weigh on a city or a state's budget? So I'm thinking about it from a policy perspective. Absolutely. It's a problem.
Right.
But what is the best solution outside of helping said country with their own infrastructure, economic challenges, versus helping people when they come into our country? I also think our country, there's an economic advantage of having, immigrants here. That while there are people who are complaining about it, if you go down to factories where food is being processed.
Oh, I know. I know firsthand.
Yeah. I mean, it's akin to prison labor, which thrives off of people being in prison because we get goods and services made that we're using, right? Like, so I am a benefit, I know, of someone who built something or did something while they've been incarcerated. Just like I'm sure we're eating something that has been tilled or processed by someone who's been incarcerated. I feel the same way about immigrants in this country, that they are doing certain jobs, not all jobs. There are different people in this country who do different things that we all benefit from, either knowingly or unknowingly. And so when I hear these conversations about immigration, like close the border, build the wall, it doesn't work, because we actually need migrants in this country to help with the processing and the functioning of certain industries that we're just not thinking about, because, again, we're sitting back and we have the luxury of saying they shouldn't do that and they shouldn't do this because it doesn't affect us personally.
Right.
But when you think about it on a deeper level, all the major industries use some form of the migrant system, in my opinion.
So, without giving too many details, I used to work for a company.
What industry?
So it was a staffing agency.
Okay.
And in the staffing agency, just straight up, 99% Hispanic.
Okay.
Right? And what's interesting is that we have an employee, I can't remember the name of the system, but we have a way of verifying if someone is legal and not legal. Not every company requests that you check.
Right.
Right? And we know why.
Right.
So, and I remember asking, and they said most of the clients don't check. And that's what it is. So now I've gone to these places and I've seen the conditions, and I would say that the conditions are actually fine. So I've been in, I don't want to name any particular companies, but I've been into some, like you've seen their commercials and stuff like that. And conditions are fine. Like, it's not a dirty place. They, for the most part, it seems like they treat them okay. They have resources. They usually have staffing agencies that are about it, because there's a lot of turnover as well, especially when you're dealing with people who are basically living underneath the radar because they're not here legally. So, it was very interesting to be around. But I will say this: they abide by the laws as far as
the company.
Yeah, the companies. They abide by the laws as far as payment goes.
So they're paying the minimum wage?
They're paying the minimum wage,
which is $7.
Well, in New Jersey,
$7.25.
No, the state minimum wage.
Okay.
So in New Jersey, well, at the time I was working there, they had passed where they were trying to up it every year for like 4 years until they get to 15, I think. But I think at the time it was like $13 an hour. Right. Okay. So they abide by those laws. They make sure that they pay them minimum wage. Right. They considered them like if they were legal citizens. So it wasn't under the table or anything like that. They just didn't check. They just said, here's a job. Here's a job. You want a job? Fill out this form.
Got it.
And they would even set up stuff like, we'd pick you up, you come to our office, and they were strategic. In New Jersey, we have entire towns that are just majority Hispanic, and they would just be in the Hispanic towns. There might be even two offices that we would have in one particular town to service people because many of them don't drive. Right. So they have to walk there or maybe take the bus there, but it's at a good location where they can be picked up, and then they would take them to their client's location. So I say all that to say that while it's not, and this is very anecdotal, I don't know for every industry or anything like that, but it was interesting to have a glimpse to look at it. Many of them are very hardworking. Many of them are pretty reliable. But at the same time, they are living underneath the radar on a constant basis. they can't do all the things that a regular citizen can do, like get a license to drive. So that's why, when they get pulled over, they get in a lot of trouble because they're not supposed to be driving. So it's a very interesting situation to put somebody in. I'm not, because you stated your position on immigration. I'm not against immigration at all. I know plenty of immigrants who've contributed a lot to this country, whether it be low-skilled labor or high-skilled labor. Right. I know lots of, where I live, there's lots of Indian people here because of tech, H-1B visas. So I'm all for immigration.
Right.
I'm all for rational immigration.
Okay. Right. What's rational immigration?
Rational immigration is there's some sort of process.
Okay.
And yes, there are some sort of hurdles or even a queue before you are considered to come over here and stay here, permanently. Whether it be even stuff like student visas and temporary work visas, that's fine. Because to me, that shows some sort of possible value of being here as a citizen. Now, someone who comes across the border, who may or may not have an ID, we have no idea where they're from, we have no sort of background, I think that's on top. Like, I try not to lean on the economics, but from a security standpoint, remember, we can't get on a plane without taking off our damn shoes.
I know.
Yet people can come through the border and we have no idea where they're from. And we know now that there have been people who have been on terrorist watch lists who've made it to our southern border. Like, that is a major security issue on top of the people management, because most of them aren't obviously terrorists. But like, to me, that doesn't make sense. That's what I'm saying. Like, if it makes sense, then we should do it. But it doesn't make sense if we're concerned about our safety as a nation. We're concerned about the living conditions of people who are going to be here, whether they're legal or illegal. Like, we need to make sure that's good. Because I don't think it helps DC if there are people who defecate on the street.
I agree.
Right? Because they have no place. Where else are they going to take a shit? So, so I think it doesn't make sense to do it in such a disorganized manner. And what we're seeing right now is everybody's in emergency mode. So where does that money come from? Actually, in many ways, it doesn't come from anywhere. It comes from debt.
Wow. Well, you just said a mouthful.
I know, I said a lot.
I mean, but I think we're back where we started, which is we're not in a winning position on immigration.
No.
And again, what president has truly gotten it right? And so I don't even think immigration is it's not a partisan issue. It's just an issue that this country, just like other countries, continue to face. I think to me, this is just from my own personal lens, it seems like it's an economic thing. How much money do we want to put into fixing it? Again, I would like to see the budget compared to the defense budget. I'm sure doesn't even compare. But the narrative that immigrants are messing up the country, it's just not right. I don't like that, because I also think too, there's this idea that immigrants are only of one heritage, which is like Latin American or Central American. Again, you just stated there are immigrant towns that maybe they only speak Spanish, or maybe they only speak Cambodian, or maybe they only speak, the language in Singapore, or maybe they only speak, Haitian or whatever. And so I think for us, and I'm speaking generally, the face of immigrants right now just feels like it's somebody from Mexico, a brown person. When there are other brown people from other countries in this world that are also migrating here. But for some reason, this population has been singled out. And to say that, immigrants are committing crime, Americans commit crime. We live, I mean, right here in DC, crime is high right now. Kids are out here carjacking, beating up people. Someone from the former Trump administration just got killed. He was carjacked on Monday, and unfortunately, he died yesterday from a result of the injuries. I mean, the thing is, people are getting carjacked. You give up your car, and they still shoot you. It's just menace.
Wow.
It's absolute menacing that's happening. And those aren't immigrants. So for us to have this tenor that immigrants are killing, raping, robbing, stealing, regular non-immigrant people in this country are doing those same things.
Right.
It's just an othering that we like to use for immigrants. And that's, to me, that's why I am pro-immigration, because I don't like that we're just othering people. Just because you're an immigrant, like you said, doesn't mean that you don't have any value to add to our country.
Right. No, there's tons of immigrants who add value. There are people I didn't even know were immigrants. Right. My father was an immigrant. I didn't have really a relationship with him, but he was an immigrant to this country from Trinidad. So I think, you know what I think it is when it comes to that? I think it's, let's say, because I've seen this, a drunk driver hits and kills somebody who's an American citizen, that person dies. From the family's perspective, they're upset that this person who's not supposed to be here took someone's life. So it's that kind of thing where you're not even supposed to be here, and now that you are here, you're committing crimes. Like, that's not good. So I think that's where it kind of stems from. The why Mexicans, because I think that was the old image, because it was a real thing, especially like in places like California.
Right.
So I think that's still the same image, but they don't realize that the problem has evolved. Right? We're always going to have some form of illegal immigration situation happen. That's always going to happen. There's no perfect border. Right. And it happens all over the world. There are Americans who go abroad on tourist visas and suddenly don't come back after 90 days. Yeah. So that stuff always happens. But I think what's happening now is that it's evolved and it's become an industry. Yeah. And it's far more crazy than I think people realize.
Yeah. It's again, it's weighing on a city's budget.
Oh yeah.
And it's weighing on a state's budget, because resources that were going into after school care, I don't know, are now being organized to go into helping staff, shelters or safe houses or whatever the official term is per that jurisdiction. And that is where people begin to feel. I even think I saw, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like Cardi B was like yelling about this, about something, trying to be, I think she's trying to be informed, shout out to her for trying to be informed, but talking about, I don't know if she was talking about Eric Adams or if she was talking about Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, but just saying that, New Yorkers are starting to feel it.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
I think, and if I'm to be fair because I'm in Jersey and writing for the Post, we often talk about Eric Adams. There's nothing that Eric Adams can do and look like he's winning.
No.
There's nothing.
He is villain number one. He is villain number one, and I don't think he had a chance when he went from the day one. People just didn't really like him. I don't know where it turned. Maybe it's some of the stuff he said. I'm not quite sure, but
actually, I kind of feel the opposite.
Really?
I feel like there was more hope because
okay,
there's a phrase that I always have. And in times of a divided nation like this last election, there's no greater uniter than Bill de Blasio, because everyone hated Bill de Blasio.
People did hate Bill de Blasio.
Everyone hated him. Right. Democrats, Republicans, they all hated Bill de Blasio by the time his tenure was over. So that's why it was even funnier that he tried running for president. It was like, man, your head is blown up. But I think there's a lot of hope that a former cop like Eric Adams was going to have some sort of law and order vision. And I think he's trying to do that, or he has been trying to do that. But this has like
immigration.
It just made everything way more complex.
Yeah.
So I'm saying he's always going to lose on this particular issue because it's not his fault. And everything that he's doing seems very desperate because no one plans that all of a sudden hundreds of thousands of people are going to show up at your doorstep. You got to take care of them. And on top of them having they don't have laws. They have like policy edicts where it says no one should go without shelter. And so now that when someone shows up, they have to give them shelter, I think, in a certain amount of hours.
Yeah.
And so when tens of thousands of people show up, it's different when it's like hundreds.
Yeah.
You know, when tens of thousands of people show up, that's why they're like, if a bus is coming, you have to tell us
ahead of time.
Yeah. Like, they're going crazy.
I totally understand that. I mean, I think what Governor Abbott did down in Texas by flying people to other states. I don't know. I mean, he's probably trying to take the pressure off of his own state, but also trying to make other states feel his own state-based pain.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it goes back to the narrative that you said. Like, we're sitting in our places of luxury, we can't feel it because we're not border states. You know what I mean? We can't really feel. Even when I go back home to Tennessee, are there people who've come from other countries? There, absolutely, but they're not coming in droves. And when people are talking about shipping people, Tennessee is just not one of those states high up on the list. You know what I mean? Like, they're sending them to these big democratic cities, quote unquote. And Memphis just isn't that place. So
they're going up. They're even going out to. I've been hearing about in Colorado.
Interesting.
I know.
That's very interesting.
So they're sending them out there too. They're sending them everywhere. Yeah. I think everybody's in a losing position on this.
Yeah.
And it's because our border is supposed to be taken care of by the federal government. The administration that's in charge is supposed to manage it, and they're clearly not managing it. And they're doing things that are counterproductive. Like, there's no way that we can manage. Juan comes through the border. All right, Juan, we'll send you over here, and you're going to be able to track and know where Juan is at. If Juan is ever going to come back to court to see if his asylum claim is valid or not. Like, we have no idea how many people are here. At the same time, I feel like no one has any really good solution other than, I think the stay in Mexico order was the best solution. I don't think it's the everything solution, but it's the best solution that I've seen thus far when Trump was in office. But I'm seeing dumb solutions coming from the Republican Party, right? Not even saying go back to Trump's order. I'm seeing we need to invade Mexico and go after the cartel. I think is an absolutely stupid solution.
Absolutely. Because who gonna do that?
Right. Our weakened military that's all over the world.
Right.
They have no idea. I've written articles about this.
Okay.
It's absolutely asinine. They've said that about the immigration issue and the cartel's involvement with drugs, and especially fentanyl going throughout our country. We need to go after the cartel. It's like, the Mexican government tried to have a war on drugs, a war with the cartel, and they said, you know what? We'll stand back.
Exactly.
They ain't tried that anymore.
Right.
So, I mean, I hear people who want to talk about the problem. They don't have any real solutions. Even the people who are in power. The people who are in power are so far away from it. And so they get to play games with it. And they get to barter and this and barter that. And then what becomes very evident, and like I said, I say this because it's sort of unfair because there's no winning solution. But this is the reality. A place like Chicago, which has a large Black population, well, we're going to go into deep debt to take care of these people. And then you have people who live there who've been asking for stuff. wait a second, how come you're willing to go into deep debt for these people who aren't supposed to be here, but you won't do it for us?
Yeah, I get it, man. Listen, that's what I'm saying. Like, domestic issues. Whew, I don't know. It's the same thing with sending money abroad to help another country in war when you're not fully funding programs like K through 12.
Right.
You're not fully funding programs that could help people, have better housing, right? Like, so it's, and those are just two issues, right? Like, I said this last year when I was on my podcast. 2023, in my opinion, was the year of the strike. So many industries were striking for a number of different reasons, right? And when you see that people are rising up because they don't have enough protections at their jobs, but you also see the same government who's saying we can't, give this industry more money or whatever, or this corporation, because all of it has some intercorrelatedness, send money abroad. That is frustrating.
Right.
How do you message that? Right? Like, how do you message that, the clause in this housing provision that provides money for low income people is going to run out in year 10, and that money will be shifted towards defense.
Right.
Or towards, electric vehicles, building the car grid that this country desperately needs. I get it. And I don't have a defense for that, because we should help. Again, and Chicago has a large Mexican population. They have a large immigrant population as well, not just Mexicans, but I think there's a large Ukrainian contingency there. There's a large Middle East contingency there, from different countries. And I'm sure those different constituencies would say, well, my cousin is coming over, we have to help him or her. But also, what you just said, somebody who's been there waiting in line to get on Section 8, which is always underfunded in whatever city you go to, that is frustrating.
So, and it goes back to, and I swear I'm going to work on an article about this, because I was thinking about this recently. It goes back to one word: emergency. What they determine to be an emergency. Your suffering is not an emergency. Their suffering is. And now it's an emergency. So if it's not an emergency, I know you've been waiting how many years?
I want to co-author that with you. Seriously, I would love to co-author that with you, because it's two sides of a coin.
Yeah. And everybody, this is bipartisan. Everybody determines what's an emergency. Just like the federal government, listen, we're in a deficit, we have no money, and then some guy from Ukraine comes over and stands in front of our Congress and says, give me money, we need it now. And they said, I literally heard a senator, I can't remember which guy it was, he's talking to the camera, he's like, well, we gotta give him the money. I've never heard that from a politician ever about anything. He said, we gotta give him the money. It's like, man, did he just come in and put guns to their head? And say, give me money? No, they just, it's an emergency. They need it. And I'm just like, man, I wish we could have an emergency here. Just some regular stuff that we've been longing to have taken care of. Maybe that could be an emergency. Yeah. Maybe we could go into a little bit of debt to fix that.
Well, I think that's what I'm saying. Like, why don't we do like a two sides of the coin story? Like, I'm happy to do the research around issues that are desperately underfunded. Like that people are asking about. Yeah. And how do the compare and contrast on how the federal government is spending money that could be going towards that to something else. Because I think that's, again, it goes back to policy. Like, obviously feelings are involved. People are emotional about a lot of things. But show me your budget that shows me what you care about.
Yes.
It is.
That's a t-shirt slogan.
Yeah. Show me your budget. It shows me what you care about.
Exactly. Well, we're coming to the end. I like to ask everybody this last question.
Sure.
Are you optimistic about the future?
Yeah, I'm always optimistic. I'm a optimistic person. Hopelessly optimistic. I always feel like we can only go up. I like to believe that everyone is acting on best intentions, and that they want the best for their society, no matter what position they currently live in or reside in. So yes, I'm always optimistic.
I am too. I'm by default an optimist.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic about like what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even really introduce you as far as like what you do, but you're a Democratic strategist, and so I'm a former Democrat. I don't even know if you know that, but I'm an independent, and I understand both sides of the coin, right? And when I left the Democrat Party, it wasn't to run into the arms of the Republicans because they have either the same issues or the same type of issues. And so what I'm trying to do is bridge a gap to find what are the solutions, right? And I think that there's too much wanting to say these people want to destroy the country from both sides, which by the way, one thing I find funny as a former Democrat who listens to a lot of right-wing politics, it's like, you guys sound just like the Democrats. Both sides think that the other side has their shit together. Right. It's like, man, see the Republicans, they all get in line. The Republicans say the same thing about Democrats. Right. And I'm like, they don't, though. Like, everybody thinks that. Yeah. Everybody thinks that the other side is masterful. But like, everybody thinks that the other side is the ultimate enemy that wants to destroy this country. Whereas I think a lot of us have a common goal. We just have differences on reaching there. And I think there's the hyperpartisanship doesn't even end when it comes to the other side. It becomes a purity test within the party as well. Are you a true conservative? Are you a true liberal? Like, it becomes even more polarizing within that as well, because everybody's looking for the traitor. Yeah. So, I think it becomes very difficult to find the people who actually want solutions, or the people who just want to complain, or the third group, the people who are above everybody else, taking advantage of the chaos and doing whatever they want to do. And that's what I find that a lot of politicians are doing for themselves. So, it's easy for some person who's in DC to get away with a whole bunch of stuff because everyone's afraid within their party to criticize them. Yep. And if somebody from the other party criticizes them, well, that's what they do anyways. Yeah. And they just get away with doing it, So I kind of veered away, but I'm optimistic, even just from something as important like what we're doing here. Yeah. Just having this conversation. Even the reason why I communicated with you is because we were on the same show. Yeah. And I think it was the first time I had like, it wasn't just me. And they were like, "Oh, she's a Democrat strategist." And Adam, they were trying to. Adam's a conservative Republican. And I had to tell them I'm not a Republican. Right. Right. But even with that, I was like, "Oh, I get her." And you were nice and you were cordial. Yeah. And I think there are a lot of people who are like you. It's just that on both sides, the people who aren't nice and cordial, who just want to complain and be ridiculous. Right. They get more shine. Because, absolutely. I mean, news is salacious. It's salacious, exactly. I always tell people, like, I'm pretty practical. I'm pragmatic. Like, I think that I'm very liberal, meaning that I probably am in agreement with some of the most extreme things that the party represents. But I also believe in accountability. And I have gone on TV on major networks and said, like, I don't agree with this. Doesn't mean I'm anti the administration or anti-democratic the way I identify, but I also think we can do better. And we deserve to share with our elected officials how we feel about them. We put them in office through our vote. So why can't I criticize my president or my VP, but also say they are doing things to help this country get better? Are we winning on the messaging war? No. I say that all the time. We need to be better messengers. But when I think about policies, things that he's doing to try and help this economy, I'm not afraid to share that as well. And so I think that you're right. If you are someone who writes, or you're on TV, or you're putting out a podcast, or you're just putting out content, people just unabashedly want you to pick a side. Right. And if you veer off from saying something negative or what could be perceived as being negative about a particular side, then you're anti them. Right. I have people who come in and say I'm anti stuff, and it's not about
being anti. It's just about, listen, it could be better. And it doesn't mean I'm not rocking with you. It just could be better. That's all.
That's it.
We can have an honest conversation about stuff that's right and stuff that, like, there are things that I've loved about certain presidents and things that I haven't loved about them. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean at the end of the day I didn't like them and think they were good for the country. I just know, like, that was probably a bad decision.
That's it.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I think you're a secret Trump supporter. That's what
Lord.
That's
No. Please. I'm definitely not a Trump supporter by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, that's the only people who criticize the Democrats.
Well,
there you go.
There you go. Right.
No, you're absolutely right. And the last thing I'll say is I criticize because I care. And I think outside of politics, just in general, if you care about somebody, you will lovingly criticize them. And, you know, for all intents and purposes, I'm a moderate. I'm on the political right. And I communicate with the political right most often. And so, like, there are a lot of conservatives I care about, and I've met a lot of them in person that I care about, and I think that they're good people. But I think they're getting screwed over by people who are conservatives as well, and who are using them. And these are just regular people. They work hard. They're not racist, bigots, or any of that stuff. They really do care about the country.
Right.
And they don't understand that there are a lot of liberals who care about the country just as much as you do. And they're tired of it too. I have a friend who's in California, who's a Republican, moderate Republican, and she talks to Democrats. And they'll say, we're dying to vote for a Republican if we can get one that we actually like. And who's not Trump, basically. Yeah. And it's because there's a lot of overlap when it comes to policy and viewpoints. And a lot of people just want normalcy.
Yeah.
They just want normal.
Right. We don't want a crazy America.
We don't want crazy.
Right.
I personally want a president who knows where he is, you know, and I want a president who isn't addicted to social media and says whatever comes to his mind at any given moment. I just want some sort of normalcy. Yeah. That's all. But without going on too long, thank you so much for inviting me into your home.
Of course.
It was great meeting you in person for the first time.
That's right.
And I'm sure we'll work together somehow in the future.
I'm sure we will as well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.